Oh, hey guys, right, we're live. We've got a few guests here. We're going to be talking about some 80s retro gaming and just memories and just having a bit. Oh, hang on, there's Nick. Nick's just on time. There you go. We're just going to have a bit of a chat. Got a few questions. If you've got any questions in the chat, feel free to throw them in. And if I see them, we'll get there. So, yeah, anyway, how you doing, guys?
Good.
Yeah, that sums it up.
Yeah, fantastic. Overwhelmed. Truly overwhelmed. Hey, look, Andrew's brought me a beer. Two.
Do you actually feel like you've been at a festival, Nick? This is like they're going into the Monday now, the third day of fall.
Yeah, but it's better than a normal festival because loads of my mates are here as well. It's like, wow, this is a great festival. Nice
toilets, I guess. After like the third day.
Speaking of which, in a minute, I'm going to go on a toilet break because I've just been streaming for now. How are we all anyway?
Good. Yeah, real good. Real good. How many of the streams did you actually watch so far?
Most?
All of them.
Yeah, I've tried to at least dip in, which has been fantastic.
Yeah, it's all been amazing, isn't it? It's been so much fun. Lex's one last night was just, that was hilarious.
That was next level. Next level, that was.
Brought out the dad dancing, didn't you? We love that.
I don't know what I was doing.
Oh, God. Right, well.
On the internet forever.
I've got a few questions that we'll start off with if anyone else wants to throw some in. But first one is pretty obvious. What is your favorite game from the 1980s? You can kind of just go into the 90s as it kind of blends, but
oh my God,
there was a lot.
I know. Are we going in a particular? Well, you might as well start, Darren.
Oh wow. Okay. Favorite game of the 80s was probably Turrican. Does anyone remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved it. I spent so much time on that. So I had it on the Commodore 64, I think, originally. Absolutely loved it. My cousin bought it. What had happened was my cousin had it, and I just kept playing it around his house all the time, just stealing his TV every time I went there. So in the end, he bought me my own copy and said, just go away, go play it, and just stop bothering me. But yeah, to this day, I just love it. Absolutely love it.
Interesting choice.
Yeah.
I think mine would be, I mean, if we're talking about like home computer games, because I had like Spectrum and I was into all that.
Oh, here it goes.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll say my actual arcade machine one, and that would be the Star Wars game, where it was all like wireframe. Do you remember that one?
Vector graphic. Yeah.
And then you got to go in at the end of the level. They had that at Charrington Bowl, so as you all know, I'm sure Charrington Bowl is up at Tolworth. And you don't know what that is? Okay. At the end, you went into the Death Star kind of to blow it up, and you get all the look at the size of that thing. So I absolutely love that. And I love Golden Axe as well, another great arcade machine. So I love those two. But on the Spectrum, it was something like Glider Rider or something like that. So I must get my Spectrum back. Or Super Hang On. I love racing games. So something like that.
How about you, Zeke?
Like if you're going actual 80s, I suppose it would have to be something like either Moonwalker or Altered Beast, because it was amongst the first. It was like I actually didn't have a console then, but my best friend at the time had, like, he was the guy that had the SNES and the Mega Drive, and he had the NES as well and everything, and the Master System. And I remember playing Altered Beast. Going around his house after school playing Altered Beast, and I had to quickly get home. So it's more like the memory of it all, really. But do you know what I mean? Like, because then I had to be at home at a quick time because my parents were like, "Oh, you should be straight home from school." And I remember playing like Altered Beast and being my mind was blown. And I remember when he first got Moonwalker, that really was like, yeah, that was just not that they're not actually good games, in my opinion, but memory wise they're like amongst the first gaming memories. Like,
it's weird.
Well,
We're
sorry,
going
Pete.
back. Yeah, sorry. When you go back and actually look at games you thought were absolutely amazing, like some people saying in the chat they had Atari. I had an Atari, and I had Pac-Man, which I thought was amazing because I'd played Pac-Man in an arcade, and then had Asteroids, and then you go and play it now, and you're like, how did I spend weeks on this? It's like nuts.
I was going to say, wasn't one of the special moves in Moonwalker? He was like thrusting, and that was one of the moves. So, and there was like children in it and stuff. So
it was like he synchronized. He got everyone dancing with him, and then he gave
was the special.
Gave one of his like seismic pelvic thrusts, and the way,
they were different times.
It was different times, and then he just.
What chat have I just joined?
That's like going back in time.
Seismic pelvic thrusts. Yeah, that was his special move.
Wasn't that your nickname when you were younger? Was it?
The seismic pelvic thrust. I know it still is, Tom. It still is.
That's why you got the camera. Yeah.
It's for my other job.
That's when you get cramp on stream when you do a seismic pelvic thrust.
Yeah, well, as you get older,
fair enough.
Happens more often, doesn't it?
Sometimes when you don't want it to as well. I mean, then those are the real bad ones.
Sometimes in both legs.
Oh gosh, yes.
Nick, how about you? What's your favourite game of the 80s?
Right, I think this just scrapes into the 80s. It might seem a bit of a strange one, but I played this game so much, and it is Tetris on the original Game Boy, which I believe was 89. And I've got...
Yeah, it probably would have been.
Have you seen those Tetris World Tournaments that they do?
I've seen some stuff on YouTube.
Yeah.
Well, I've got a little story about that, because I was a member of Club Nintendo at that point with the Europe-wide magazine, and they used to have a ranking thing of top scores for all of the big Nintendo games. And I played Tetris solidly for months and months on end. And there was this German guy who had the top score and had been there for months and months and months. And I beat the top score in Europe in Club Nintendo. And to prove it, you had to take photographs of the screen. That was the only way you could prove it and send them off. So I used virtually a whole reel on some poxy little Kodak thing. The whole lot came back out of focus. And I couldn't prove it. And I never got anywhere near that score again.
Gutted.
That is actually pretty bad. That would be kind of gut wrenching, because that must be difficult to do as well. Like,
man, so many hours I put in. I used to walk to school or cycle to school, and everywhere I was seeing blocks in my head fitting into buildings, and I would mess with my mind.
Yeah, when you start seeing that happening, then
when did you go to the therapist?
Yeah, you still got to go.
I think I should. But we used to have to send off to like True Print and then wait like a week and a half or sometimes. So I'm waiting and it came back and I'm there literally in tears going,
Was it like 36 photos?
It was most of a film.
And you'd have had to pay a good amount. I think, wasn't it like, I remember it being like 7-8 quid to get your exposures. Yeah. Even at a cheap place, it was like 7-8 quid, I remember.
It was painful.
I remember having to go and get photos whenever my family would send me down to the local pharmacy to go and get the photos. Yeah. God, I remember having to do that's so weird. That's an 80s memory right there. That is. Yeah. They give it to you in a little foldy thing, a little foldy envelope, and you get some.
But then, if I quickly say arcades, I was mad on in the late 80s, and I loved the RoboCop machine. Spent far too much money on that, and Bubble Bobble was just brilliant.
Bubble Bobble. I had that on the Amiga as one of the first games I got on the Amiga, and it was like I have an arcade game in my home, and that was the amazing thing about it. It was like unbelievable.
Well, I tell you what, and I never played it in the arcade, but I had the sequel, which was Rainbow Islands on the Atari ST, and I played that to death, and it's an amazing, amazing game. It's so good.
Yeah, very cute.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's why you're so good at fitting tat into the shelves behind you perfectly. It's all those years.
He's just still playing, isn't he? That's still is.
Yeah. It's skills, it's all life skills. Oh, I've only just noticed what you've highlighted there. I've only just seen that. Thanks, Steve, for sharing that. That's
Wow.
brilliant.
Wow, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Amazing.
It's worth a
Well,
drink.
my 80s ones were. I mean, I was only 6 when the 80s finished, so it was the end of the 80s. Was the original Prince of Persia on Mac, because my dad had like a Mac from work, and it was the only game on it, and I played the crap out of that, and it was brutal as well because it was like these jaw things that would just slice you in half. And I'm there like 6, 7 years old playing this brutal game. It was so difficult as well. There was one level where you faced yourself, so every move you put in, the computer would automatically count. It was like
You went through a mirror, right? You jumped through a mirror. I mean, I remember that.
And you
yeah,
fought yourself, which was just
that's brought memory back, Tom, because that is a classic game. You're right. You used to step on the little things, and you had to judge the ledges, and
you'd fall down.
Have to step on floor panels. Yeah,
and it was really graphic for the time.
Well, platforms back then, they were so unforgiving. It's like one pixel out. No, you didn't land on that ledge. So, oh, come on.
Yeah,
like
scrambling.
You get 3 lives, and you're on the 49th screen out of 50, and if you're dead, you're back to screen 1. Unbelievable.
And I think I only completed it once, but I got to the end because what happens if you get to a princess at the end, and if you get to the princess at the end and you've got your sword out, she kills you.
Hey.
So you've got to approach her, put your sword away, and then you can complete the game. But if you approach, so you got all the way through, you go there, and she kills you at the end. It's like, oh, great.
So definitely don't approach women you don't know with your sword out. I mean,
they tend to frown upon that.
Yeah.
That's good life advice right there.
Yeah, I think so.
They will kill you.
Yeah, just yeah. Well, I mean, you've got to be worried if they whip out their own sword. I mean, then that's a different question.
Yeah, you're in the wrong castle if that happens.
Yeah.
Arcade wise, I'll just slip this one in. I've just looked up and it was 1989, and that's the Turtles arcade game.
Yeah.
Oh,
was that when they used to fling towards the camera?
4 player.
Yeah,
was that one where if you got the right move and it would
I think it was with the stick. The guy
and it come to, and that was the most mind-boggling thing you'd seen at the time. It was like that was a 4-player with big spread. It's like the Simpsons cab as well. There were like 4 really big
yellow machine from what I remember, but it's amazing because it was like 4 players. Take a turtle each.
I remember being in an arcade and they always cranked the turtle volume right up because that was the game everyone was playing. So you walk in an arcade and you could hear it, even if it's at the back, the Turtles theme tune. They could crank it right up. It's Phoebe.
What about you,
I have to highlight it.
Sonic was great for its day. Amazing.
It's that 90s though, because that was on the Mega Drive when it first came out, wasn't it? I'm sure that was about 92.
It's going to be right on the cusp.
Yeah, so many of these games chat are sort of like going into 90s.
Yeah,
so many.
I think that's when it I think that's when the tech allowed the more genres to pop up, I suppose, wasn't it? I mean, because
91.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of my gaming memories are Amiga based, and I've been looking at all those games because I came on before I came on. I was like, okay, I like this game. I remember liking Syndicate. I liked Chaos Engine. I liked
Chaos Engine.
Chaos Engine was amazing. But they're all like 92, 93, and
what about like
Bullfrog games? Speedball 2.
Speedball 2.
Oh,
the sound on that metal on metal sound, that was absolutely fantastic. That was.
Do you remember Xenon 2?
Yeah.
The soundtrack, the best soundtrack to a game ever. I love that.
I think a lot of the games, like people forget, like all the NES games were in the 80s pretty much. But I didn't play the Nintendo Entertainment System until after the Super Nintendo, which was weird.
Yeah, same here actually. Yeah, same here.
Yeah.
A lot of the 80s games I played in the 90s. Yeah. So my kind of gaming knowledge merges into early 90s as well. Amigas I loved. I had the Amiga 500, 500 plus, and 600, all at different times. I loved them. Absolutely loved them.
I got a 1200.
I never had the 12.
With the AGA chipset. The advanced graphics architecture.
Did you
Master Race.
get involved?
Yeah. Well, now nothing's changed. I'm still.
Was there a guy at all of your schools who was like the dealer in knockoff games?
Oh,
He'd
yeah.
have like in his
Becky
backbook,
games.
he'd have a disc tray.
Yeah.
You go, what do you want?
Yeah.
What do you want?
Oh
Xenon
gosh.
2, hold up, Xenon 2,
Yeah.
five.
You get your boots C15 tape, and give him your boots C15 tape, and for £1 or 50p, he'd do you any Spectrum game, and you'd get it back, and you'd sit there for like 5-10 minutes going, and then they didn't work. It's like,
Oh, no, you know what?
you adjust the tone and all that. Oh, geez.
I've got a horrible story to tell about this. You know, the copying floppy disks, and at school. So there was a kid that had an Amiga as well, and he used to be able to get. He had all the new games, and I remember wanting Theme Park, but it was like 35 quid. So but unfortunately, I used to be a bit of a at school, and this kid didn't like me because maybe I'd taken the mick out of him before, and I paid over my couple of quid for my copy of Theme Park, went home all excited, put it into my Amiga, and he'd left some like sarky message instead. It wasn't the game. It was like, screw you, and I'm keeping your 2 quid. Yeah. I felt like, wow.
That guy's a genius.
Yeah, he got me good.
You got there,
I did. It was, it was well deserved though. In hindsight, at the time I obviously got my revenge, but in hindsight, he was right to do what he did. So, but yeah, God. I'd forgotten about that. Like, yeah, how could I forget? That's a great thing about talking about this kind of stuff.
I remember one vivid memory from the 80s, going back to my Spectrum days, and I loved that computer, and I had so many games on it. Would be buying like Sinclair User and Crash and the others, and they'd have a tape stuck to the front of the thing, and it'd have a demo on it and some really crap homebrew game and some other stuff. But just the fact that for your $1.99 you'd get a magazine and some games, which were usually...
Some of those magazines had like programs you could type in, and you'd be there like for 4 hours typing this thing in, and then thinking, great, I'm going to get a great free game of like Breakout or something, and then you'd run it, and they'd never run because you missed like a semicolon off somewhere, and you'd just be going through, going, oh my god!
I remember the Acorn Electron was like that, where you just had like the free demo would be a whole page that you had to sit there and write. Yeah. And like you said, by the end of it, it didn't work.
It didn't work.
Imagine the kids nowadays. Yeah, you want a demo? Sit down and write for 4 hours.
Yeah.
Imagine writing Fortnite before you got to play it. So...
I mean, it was one of the. It was one of the. I think it was one of the things that you're kind of missing now in a way, because it was one of the cool things about having a computer and going out and wait. I used to be really eagerly waiting like the next issue to come out, and then there'd be at the end of obviously the magazine, they'd tell you what would be on the next month's issue, so there'd be certain issues that you'd be really, really wanting. So I remember when they had Sensible World of Soccer, the Moon edition, and I was waiting literally as soon as I knew it was there. Like my whole life became about waiting for the Moon edition demo.
And it's the only place you could get hints or anything for games, because you couldn't go and Google it. You can't find out how to complete a game or do a little trick. You had to go. Like if they said, "Oh, we've got a guide to I don't know." Cauldron or Attic Attack or something, you're just like, oh my god, there's a whole map of the entire game.
Walkthroughs, and like CMVG used to give away little books with like walkthroughs and cheat codes and all of that.
Yeah. Do you remember Mean Machines? And I think I used to have Amiga format, Amiga Gamer or something, but then when the consoles were, it was CVG and then Mean Machines, and then Edge came out and it was all fancy.
Oh, Edge.
Yeah. Do you remember Edge?
I remember Edge.
Yeah, Edge.
There was also the Nintendo Hotline as well. I know that I got really stuck on. This was in the 90s, I think. It was Link's Awakening on the Game Boy. I got totally stuck, and I was in France, and I badgered the absolute crap out of my parents to spend like 20 quid on using the international phone line to phone Nintendo Hotline because I was stuck on this bloody game.
Did it work? Did they tell you what to do?
It did, yeah. I completed it. So
I never rang it.
It was well worth it then.
Yeah. It was some like woman in a call center in Surrey or something describing to like a 12-year-old lad in France how to complete a game. It was just weird.
They must have just had encyclopedias of what to do in every scenario in front of them.
Oh, Dave Vinton's just put in like the cheat codes used to be poke. So you on the spectrum. I don't know if that's the same for other people. So you'd like poke 16384, 255, and you do that for about 5 times and you get infinite lives or something. But yeah, pokes and cheats. Yeah.
The thing is, though, nowadays there's very rarely even demos for games. You have to end up going to YouTube and seeing a gameplay video to see if you actually would be a game that you'd want to play.
Definitely.
Or there's like open betas or betas of whatever it's called.
I think the worst thing about that time period, though, was how obviously the magazines were, like you said, your only source of info and stuff. So the screenshots were always so misleading as to the final product, weren't they? Like the screenshots would make this next game that's coming out is going to just blow your socks off, and you'd see these graphics, and every time it was.
Do you remember like the fantasy games in the 80s? The big box fantasy games always had a woman with massive knockers.
in a fur kind of bikini.
Just shoehorned into a game. It didn't matter what the game was. They just put a bird with massive boobs on the card. That'll sell it.
The thing is, the fact that we all remember that means we all bought it. So it worked.
Yeah, the Dungeons and Dragons type one, or like those sort of ones, they were the worst for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
The thing is, even when you watch like trailers on TV now, it always says not actual gameplay. So they're still doing the same tricks now as they did then. Just now we're a bit more aware of it.
I don't know. I think we're a lot closer though. They do show some gameplay as well, I think. But I think it's not just that. I think it's just like you said. I think the graphics have obviously come up a long way now, haven't they? It was just you used to get artwork as to hype you up, and then your imagination would run away based on the artwork you saw, and then in the end, all you would see is a couple of like pixels on screen.
I was back. I tell you what, one company that didn't put fake screenshots on their game packaging was Atari. I haven't got any to hand, but you look on the back of Atari 2600, like ET for example, and it's just like about 12 different squares, and it's like that's what they're selling the game on. It's like they're so bad, the pictures they use, but they weren't lying. They were that.
They weren't like they were yeah.
They were bad. But yeah, the thing is, I still remember back in the day looking at it thinking, oh my god, the graphics were amazing. It's more than one square. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I've got another question. This one might be a bit obvious, but favorite console and why?
Does it have to be from the 80s, or are we just talking?
It could be from the 80s, but 90s was a really good time for consoles as well. So,
okay.
So,
Peter, how about you?
Well, I think if you're talking console, probably N64. Yeah. Or maybe a Dreamcast. I love my Dreamcast.
Ooh.
I love the Dreamcast.
Left field.
It was just so out there for its day, wasn't it?
Yeah. It was when I first played that. I think I played like a Virtua Tennis on that, and it was like incredible. Like yeah, but I'd probably go to say N64 because that's first time I think I played Mario Kart was on that. So yeah,
the N64 was actually like the first console that I actually had bought for me. Like before then, I just had the Amiga, but I'd never had consoles. So the N64 was my first console. So I remember it for that. But I think like my favorite was either the Saturn or the Dreamcast, because I was mad into my 2D sprite based kind of graphic games, and they were just amazing on the Saturn. And I mean, like Capcom had so many weird 2D beat 'em ups that, like, there was the vampire ones. Can't remember what they were called now. The name escapes me. They're called like Dark something, Dark Soul. I'm not sure. They call them different names in Japan and in the UK. And then there was obviously like all the Street Fighter games, and I used to just love the Japanese versions of those.
And the overblown combos and all the points.
Just the style of them, graphically. And when I think its peak was when they on the Sega, God, what's it called? Saturn, the Sega Saturn, when they actually had a 4 meg expansion cart that used to plug into the back of the console, and it would allow you to play the X-Men versus Street Fighter when that came out. X-Men versus Street Fighter is one of the most gorgeous games, like sprite-based fighting games, just gorgeous. And like when you did Wolverine's Weapon X, it was just...
And there's a big appetite for all that stuff. The prices on a lot of the games, the sort of games,
crazy.
I had one called something like Dark Stalkers or something.
That's
like that
the, yeah, that's it. That's the one I was talking about. Yeah. You had like all these weird.
I sold that before. That's all for
a lot of money. Yeah. If you ever find, well, you won't, but if you ever find Street Fighter 03, they call it in Japan, but it's just like Alpha 3. That's worth in the Japanese version. 03 is worth like 300 quid now or something at least. So it's crazy, especially if you've got because in Japan they used to sell them with the 4 meg cart I mean the packaging is just the packaging is exciting. I mean, you could literally, I love it, absolutely love it. That's my dream console, I think. Yes, the Saturn with a bunch of 2D beat 'em ups.
How about you, Nick?
I think I've shared a number of times. There is no contest. It's the Super Nintendo. I loved that machine with every inch of my body. That sounds like,
I don't know if we want to hear about it.
Not what the cartridge slot is for, Nick.
Does it still call you?
Is this like an alternate American Pie scene with Nick and the SNES on the kitchen counter? You know.
But it was just that time in my life, everything was good. I was 17, 18, had the best console on the market, and I was just loving life, and the memories from that period, and the games were just bloody good as well. Nintendo nailed it on that system, and just happy times. And I never quite lived up to that. I've had loads of consoles since, but that was the peak of gaming for me. And I had plenty before, but it was never quite, the excitement building up to it, because Nintendo really, drew it out. And it was like I saved all of my money from my paper rounds, and I was at Woolworths when the doors opened with all of my money in a little cigarette tin. And there I was, opening time, queued up on my bike. I had to cycle all the way home. It was about 5 miles on a bike with a massive box on my handlebars like this. Yeah, happy memories.
Cool.
What about you, Tom?
Well, I was just thinking, I've got sort of 3 as such: the computer, handheld, and a console. The one from the 80s is the Game Boy. The Game Boy was it was my first console as such. It sucked that you couldn't see it at night time. That was my one annoyance. I had this stupid
strap on.
Stupid. Whoa!
I think we've established that was Nick and the SNES. So
add on a light thing. Yeah, get it. Move on.
I think it was called the Game Buddy. I know they said Fleshlight then. It's called the Game Light or something, wasn't it?
He's never inviting us back now, Darren.
I don't do live often.
No, this is age gated. This stupid thing with speakers, which the speakers were quieter than the actual thing itself. The Game Boy was But my first sort of console was in the 90s, which was the PS1, which I still get goosebumps when I hear that intro loading music. Resident Evil 2, PS1. Yeah, that was the thing. And then the home computer thing, I'm only saying because of Zaheer, which was an Amiga 500 with a 0.5 meg expansion pack on the back, which was the shit.
Top of the line. That's you had to pay for that extra.
I thought it went underneath. Didn't it go underneath?
It's slotted underneath.
Underneath. That's right.
Well, the one I've got, it's like it slots in the back.
No,
like
there's a hole underneath.
Oh, is there?
It went in there.
Ah,
got to get around.
I've got it still, but it's all yellow, and I need.
I remember loading up like Workbench on the Amiga, and it used to give you arthritis, and then just load up like the word processor. You'd have to, because you'd be using your wrists a lot to swap disks. And
Oh God.
yeah, it was crazy times. It did give you a strong right hand.
Yeah, but if I was to pick one, it'd be the Game Boy, even though it was bad on batteries and there's
Not
lots of
bad.
downsides. But
Not as bad as the Game Gear. That thing was shocking.
oh yeah,
The Lynx and the Game Gear were both.
it's the thing about the Lynx. You could
Phil's just got
turn
a
it
good
better.
question. Sorry, Phil's just asking about favourite game theme tune.
Goal scoring superstar hero from Sensible World of Soccer.
Mine would be, I mentioned it earlier, but Super Hang On, because I think there is the theme, the main tune that was on there was brilliant, but you did have a choice of about 4 tunes, and they were just fantastic. I love that.
I think for me, it was actually what Nick mentioned earlier about Xenon. That was an amazing theme track to that.
Yeah, I'd probably go with that as one that just stands out in my mind. The bomb, the bass tracks on that, Mega Blast and stuff. But so much good music in computer games, and Nintendo are really good at that, producing original tunes. But yeah, that Xenon 2 was just.
Yeah, I don't know if he was talking 80s, but I suppose not. But
I think mine was Mario. Mario on the Game Boy, the original Mario Brothers.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Is that the first one, Super Mario Land?
Super Mario Land, yeah.
I used to be able to complete that on one life, and I managed to get a Game Boy. It's only about a year ago, and I picked it up, and I could remember where all of the hidden levels were. It's weird. It's all in there. Still going down the little tubes and knowing where they were, and doing the underwater level and the flying level. I could do the whole.
I could never finish that game. I finished the second one, but never finished the first one.
I played that again. That and Tetris, I lost ridiculous amounts of hours to. But yeah, it's got some great tunes in it for sure. They're so addictive. And they get in your head.
What about you, Darren? The console or gaming device?
Well, console-wise, it was probably Super Nintendo. I loved the Dreamcast because it had like a lot of firsts for what we kind of take for granted nowadays. But it had to be the Super Nintendo because I didn't get the Super Nintendo the year it came out. I got it a year later because I remember asking my parents at the time, I said, I really want the Super Nintendo. I really want this for Christmas. I don't want anything else. Just stop buying me everything else. I just want the Super Nintendo. And they said, well, we'll see what we can do. And when you're a kid, you're like, I'm getting it. I'm definitely getting it when your parents say, we'll see what we can do. But when Christmas came, I unwrapped my present and it was a barcode battler. Do you remember those? And I was like, hey, yeah, just what I wanted. When really I'm thinking, it's not a Super Nintendo.
I remember that being a thing, but I never understood. Did you just scan random barcodes and it gave
pretty much? I was picking up tins of beans going, yep, that did something. That was other, and then you have like little points and stuff that you tally up with.
So when you opened it, were you like,
no way.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, I was too nice to go, that is not a Nintendo. And in fairness, I played it like all the time because I wanted them to think that they'd got me something really good. But in the next year,
you were a good kid, man.
I just
that's pretty impressive behavior. I would
have
have just
seen there's some good videos on YouTube of kids unwrapping presents on Christmas Day and just being, what the is this?
Yeah.
I want a Nintendo.
I think that almost became something.
One of Darren.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, when they think they're getting Nintendo Wii's and things, but they're not. And
yeah. I think back then we kind of all appreciated everything we got anyway. So you just kind of said thanks and got on with it. So
I think so. I think we did appreciate stuff a lot more. It feels like we did anyway. I don't know if it's true, but yeah, it was it was a lot of money from my parents at that time. I mean, I funded my own my Nintendo had it after the beginning of the 90s, but previously it's my parents, and it was a lot of money to fork out for Spectrum when they did, So yeah, it was a big deal back then.
I've still got my original PS1. and Game Boy. Oh no, I've got my original Game Boy, but idiot here left the batteries in, so it buggered it.
Oh,
Does the PS1 still work as well?
Yeah, it still works. Yeah, got the box, all the games somewhere.
Right. I remember buying a PS1 about a week after it came out, and instantly I unwrapped it out of the box brand new, and I already had to stand it on its side to get Tekken to work. Because of the laser, I was like, it's brand new. How can I have to do that already? And yeah, I kept it. I didn't take it back. I just kept it. Just played it on its side.
I tell you what I did on Christmas Day, going back to the Spectrum that my parents shelled out a lot of money for, for our household. It was a lot of money. And I switched it on, and then I had this joystick adapter you had to slide in the back with loads of pins.
Kempton, was it a Kempton joystick?
Kempton, yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
And it had the port for the front. And it tells you all over the packaging, do not plug this in when the machine is on. Yeah. I was in too much of a hurry. Machine's on, and I fried it. I fried the machine within 5 minutes. Thankfully, we had to wait. I had to wait then till, I don't know, 2 or 3 days after Boxing Day to take it back. And we just took it back and went, it don't work.
So you definitely didn't put the Kempton Joy port back in. No,
we were just to the can't make it work. And it looked like they'd been having this all day long, and they just went, yeah, okay, I'll just get you another one. They were just like, yeah.
That's why Sinclair went bust.
Yeah, because of you.
It wasn't the C5. It was you taking all these kids taking fried Spectrums back.
Yeah, I was distraught on Christmas Day.
Well, there was a console that I've got, which was my dad bought cheap, but he bought it in the 90s, like PC World, dead cheap. I'm just looking up the name. It's an Amstrad GX 4000, and that was renowned for just blowing up. It had some battery in that if it just went, it would go all over the motherboard and just completely ruin your console. And when I was at my dad's the other week, I found it, and he shared it in the box, everything. I was like, no way, have we still got this? It was dreadful. It had one game, I remember, and it was bloody awful.
Is it worth anything now, or is it just
probably
worth a bit?
The thing is, I don't turn it on in case the battery thing blows up on it. So
you'd have to open it up and give it a good inspection before you.
No, just plug it in, have a go. It'll be fine.
Yeah, I'll do what Nick did and just
make
plug
sure
it in.
make sure you film it.
Yeah, I did that with that BBC, and literally when I turned that BBC on, I did actually film it. I was going to make a video. I should have done it. It's hilarious, but just plumes of smoke were coming out of the damn thing. Friday.
Crazy.
We got a question here from Stu. It says, did you ever buy a game, console, or computer back in the day and think to yourself, they'll never improve on this?
Yeah. My console moment. Sorry, go on.
No, go.
I was going to say Dreamcast did that for me. When I first played Dreamcast, I thought, okay, now we're at arcade at home, because that's like it was. Power Stone was amazing, and I think I had Soul Calibur with it when it came out, and I thought that was the first time I was like, okay, this is now we've made it. Little did I know, obviously, how much further we could.
You see,
go.
I kind of thought that with the Atari 2600s, because I mean, growing up in the 70s, there weren't arcade machines, so you got to the end of the 70s, suddenly you have like Space Invaders, big Space Invaders machines, and you've got like Pac-Man, all stuff like that, Defender type games, and all you've got at home is like some sort of Pong variant. So we had like a Video Master, which gave you the option of football, tennis, or squash. And football was like, it was in colour, so this was good. It wasn't like a binary one. And then all of a sudden, you could get an Atari. You could get an Atari console, and you could have any game you want. And it's exactly what Z said. You thought you had the whole of that arcade. You didn't have to spend 10p playing Space Invaders. You could get your Space Invaders console, little cartridge, put it in. Then put Pac-Man in, then put Defender, Missile Command, and you were like, this is me set up for life. This is amazing. So is Atari for me.
Yeah,
definitely.
I think there was a moment, definitely. I was at art college at this point, and a mate of mine just threw his student loan at getting a PS1. Like, I think he had it imported, so he had it before UK release. And loading up Wipeout on PS1,
that would have been quite a
my
moment.
socks off. The soundtrack was epic. The visuals for the time were like, okay, we have we've got that. This is just
this is the future.
Yeah, it was. It was the
Yeah.
future in our little living room. And this guy as well, he lived in his own digs, student digs, on his own in a flat, like the town away. Didn't have a car or whatever. So he used to bag this console up and the whole thing and walk for about 5 miles just to come to our house where we had 5 lads sharing a house. So he could show it to us. And he was so excited. And we sat there and we stayed up all night that first night. And all he had was first Tekken, he had Wipeout, and he had Rayman. And we played those 3 games for about 24 hours straight. Great.
Crazy. I remember with the PS1, if you like go around someone's house, and I was going to say 80's got a comment about this. My mate had a chipped PS1, and he had to play it, I think, on its side with the door open. But we always used to go around, and I'd always forget to take my memory card every time with the save on. So I'd have to go home, get the memory card, and come back. It was like, oh, for God's sake.
I used to have to wedge the lid open with a pencil and do the hot switch. So just as the intro would load, switch the game quick, and then the copy would be loading, as it would trick the console into playing it. I mean, a friend of mine did that. I never did. I forgot we're live.
Yeah, the only time I did much of that was Super Nintendo, because I was so into it at that point, and I was importing Jap games. And going back to what you said, Zaheer, the artwork on the Jap stuff, the Street Fighter cover was a work of art.
Yeah.
And then the UK one had this really kind of drawn thing. But the Jap one was just so majestic, and it was long and thin, and it was beautiful.
Yeah.
But I had one of those cartridges that you put in, and you had to have a UK game in, so it would take the coding off that, and then you put your cartridge, you import either a US or Jap on top. But I was paying back then in 92, I was paying about £80 plus for a Japanese import of Street Fighter. And that was so much money for a kid at that point, but I was happy to pay it.
I did that once with GoldenEye on the N64. I did the same thing. Like, it ended up costing me 85 quid from Electric Edge at the top of the Whitgift Centre. They're gone now. But yeah, it was bonkers. But I didn't realize at the time that you shouldn't use a game with an internal save, and I lost my Mario. I remember that. That's I was like, wow. That was a rookie mistake. I didn't realize you shouldn't use a game with internal save on those. But yeah, it was a different time. And I think the cool thing is now, as much as it sucks to be older, it's really nice that when you do play like modern games, you play them with a different sense of appreciation, because it truly is mind-boggling where we're at now. Like, who'd have thought you could play a game with like 100 players on a map? It's just with the fidelity and the sound that, it's mind-boggling. I mean, like, even audio. I mean, I remember there used to be a big deal, didn't there, on cartridge games, and how many bits is the cartridge? And I remember it was a big deal that Zelda was a 256 megabit cart, and that was like a big deal because it can pack so much more in. And now we're playing games which are literally 100 gigabytes of storage space.
Writing on the box, 1 meg cartridge. In massive, that was
that was a selling point. Yeah.
In the game name, 1 meg.
Yeah. And the bits as well. The bits were a big thing, wasn't it? Like 16-bit, and the Jaguar was 64-bit, and that was just it, wasn't it? As the
Yeah.
I don't know if gamer rage was as much of a thing back then, though. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, certain games were pitched so hard. I mentioned this in the stream the other day, like Super Ghouls and Ghosts, which again I had on Jap import, was set so rock hard.
Jesus.
It's a wonder that my controllers weren't smashed to bits. The amount of times it was rage quit on that.
Oh, true, yeah.
But yeah, I think that the difficulty level, and on Spectrum, a lot of that stuff, like Jet Set Willy, a game I played so many days and weeks in.
Yeah, that was my first game I had.
Unforgiving, right?
Unforgiving. Yeah.
See, the thing is, I mean, I saw in the chat there that somebody asked what the old school joysticks, the black joysticks with the red buttons were called, and there were competition.
Well, I've got a quick shot. I've got one there, actually.
That's the quick shot and the competition pros. I went through 5 competition pro joysticks. So Gamer Rage certainly in my house was just quite.
I had a
Didn't scroll
speed.
it, but just
I had a
broke.
Speed King. Do you remember the Speed King joystick?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
like a
the
red
ones you
thing,
controlled with the
and you
yeah.
held it, and it had a thing up here. And I used to play sensible soccer with that.
It was the
And
clip you
honestly,
used to hear, wasn't it?
yeah, and you
Yeah.
go like this,
Yeah.
and after playing
Nick's not doing
sensible
that.
soccer,
Yeah.
you play sensible soccer for like 5 hours, and you'd come away, and it's just like 11-year-old thinking he's got arthritis because he's
I think I
like,
must have gone through 5 joysticks playing sensible soccer, Peter.
Yeah.
And I remember feeling like a genius when I figured out that a Mega Drive pad fit directly onto an Amiga and it worked. I didn't know that. That changed my gaming forever because then all my mates felt like that they could play as well, because before they hate playing sensible with me on my Amiga when they had it on like their SNES or whatever, because they were used to game pads. And and then they used to come around mine, and I'd give them the crappy joystick that I'd broken that they couldn't turn left, and there's mine, like the new one, and then that would break soon enough anyway. And then I figured out that Mega Drive pads had the same port connector, and it just slot right in and it worked, like no drivers or anything. I don't know how that worked. That's lucky.
So easy to break joysticks on those like running games. Like I think the first running game I had was like Decathlon, and you'd either Daily Thompsons, and if you do it on the keyboard, like your M and N, and then your I don't know S button or something, or space was jump, but on a joystick you're just like breaking the thing within 5 minutes.
But going back to what you were saying about this, I remember like Mum would call me down from my little curtain in my bedroom, dark. Dinner time, you come down and just go.
I can't hold the knife.
Yeah. Oh dear. Yeah.
GameCube was bad for that because of the tiny little joystick thing. I remember that, and then
Yeah, they were great pads, though. I did like the GameCube pad with the multiple shoulder buttons and the little extra button, and
there were so many things on that gamepad. There was just like about 4 different joysticks.
N64, that little joystick thing was bad as well. In the middle, but I don't know what it was about the GameCube one. There was one, there's a smaller one. I don't know, for some reason that just gave me like calluses on my thumb.
Well, it was like a little yellow stick, wasn't it? Yeah, like a weird that was. That was mostly used for camera, wasn't it? I think so. I'm not sure.
California Games. Do you remember that game?
Yeah.
And I think they had beach volley. There were about 4 or 5 different events, and beach volleyball was one of them. And they were, wasn't that the one where they were like held in different cities? Like there was an event in London. I mean, I might have got the wrong. Oh no, skateboard.
Yeah.
Oh no. I think I might have been thinking of a different game. But I do remember. Yeah, she's saying surfing, hacky sacking. Yeah,
I was going to say hacky sack was one.
Hacky sack was nuts.
hacky sacks, they were a thing, weren't they?
And the surfing that went from left to right, and that was a class.
Because I think the hacky sack was like in front of the Golden Gate Bridge or something, and then occasionally a bird had come over that you could hit.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, Victoria Plum says you could choose your country.
A flying bird.
You could choose your country. And I remember if you chose London, there'd be this little kind of sampled voice, really bad, going, "Welcome to London," like everything, but really kind of crunchy.
In the 80s, people on the spectrum, they tried voice sampling, and some of it was just. That was the voice. Did you hear it? What did it say? I don't know. Play it again.
But at the time, it was incredible.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Well, we've got a few minutes left because obviously we don't want to run over. But it's been a good chat so far. There's a lot of memories have come back up, stuff that I totally forgot about until you guys mentioned it. So I hope people in the chat. Obviously, I mean, it looks like the chat has been pretty busy. I'm sorry if I've missed anything. It's so hard to keep. I now know what Nick has to go through every time. And Z, I mean, you just chat and then you forget that the chat is even there, really. But good.
I don't know. I like these memory kind of walks down memory lane because it's not often you think about them. Do you know what I mean? You bury a lot of this stuff, and it's just funny how it just brings up random memories. I actually, you get vivid ones as well. I mean, I remember going to Electronics Boutique and buying video games. And the dumb thing is, this is the dumb thing, right? I used to be one of those pain in the ass kids that'd be like, because it was like 60 quid a game. I'm working part-time at Dixon's. I want it brand new sealed. So I used to make sure they used to dig out a sealed box copy, because sometimes they tried to give you one that didn't have the seal on, only for me just to take this home and rip the seal off. And I'm thinking I'm ripping the seal off Conker's Bad Fur Day. I'm ripping the seal off Mario, and I'm ripping the seal off Turok and all these games that I bought. And I'm just thinking now, and it's just weird. It reminds you. I mean, I remember it's just reminded me of actually buying Sensible World of Soccer. I actually remember going to the cash machine and then taking it. I remember it was 20 quid. Sensible World of Soccer.
I was that same customer, but when I was buying a Super Nintendo, because they were in those crappy cardboard boxes, and they'd hand me one, I'd go,
no, I want it with the
another one. No.
And then you're just going to go home and crack it open, and now you're thinking.
I would keep the box. I was like proper.
No, I was careful with the box. Yeah. I was careful. Yeah, I mean, I was very careful.
So I'll be that, and you could read it on their face. I've got a queue, mate. Do you want to?
Do you want to job?
Can I have a look at them all?
Ridiculous.
So saying about iconic moments that you remember, mine was in the original Mario Brothers. That moment where you realise you can go through the top of the map and run across the top. And I literally thought I'd broken the game, that I was God, basically. I heard about it at school. Oh yeah, you can do that, and I tried it out. That won't work. That'll never work. I tried it. I was like, like I was like looking around in case like the developers were behind me and the game police were coming to arrest me.
You've attained enlightenment at that point.
Yeah. There's moments like that in games, and I know we're going to have to wrap up. I apologise, but there's moments like that in games, and quite often I would be sat on my own in the dark in my bedroom. It'd be like, somebody come and see this. I'm on top of the level.
No forum to share it on. There's no Instagram to share a photo of it on.
Yeah, if you take a photo, it'd probably be out of focus.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'd be like, Alison or one of my sisters, come and see this. And she's like, what? And she's like, I don't give a crap. What are you showing me?
Yeah, 100%. It's craziness. It does make you appreciate, like, appreciate how far we've come now. To be honest.
Yeah, I think we should have scheduled 2 hours for this. I think.
Could have felt easy, can you really? Talking about
I think the memories just keep flooding back, don't they? They just you just remember it. You remember it all. I mean, just and they're vivid. It shows how. I mean, like it just the way that it's also amazing to see how different gaming and gamers were kind of how they were presented to the general public. I mean, you must remember Violet Bolin and Andy whatever and that little guy that used to slap game codes on his forehead, game cheat codes. They used to have this character. It was a guy it was I think it was Bad Influence. It was called. It was like a game show on ITV, and there used to be a section in it where you used to really look forward to where they'd share like a cheat in a video game, like up, A, down, left, right, and it used to be this really kind of quirky character, this like, all right, you have to press A, and he used to slap this thing on his forehead with the code, and sometimes the code was really long, so he'd have this big bit of card, and I was just thinking now. I'm like, that is how gamers were portrayed. That they thought, the TV company thought, how are we going to appeal to the gamers out there? We know there's this new breed of people that play electronic games. I tell you what, this character is going to really, really hit home to them. And now, look, it's so mainstream. It's insane.
Do you remember Games Master on Channel 4?
That was actually good. Yeah.
Awesome. The Scottish bloke who presented, I can't remember his name.
Yeah, I remember Dominic Diamond. It was, and then they got, and then they got Dexter Fletcher. Do you Games Master? Right. Yeah. What Games Master? What have we got? He was the best. Yeah.
We should just do another one of these sometime at some point on somebody's channel, and go into YouTube and find some of the adverts because they are amazing. Yeah.
Definitely. Right. Okay. Well, we better wrap up. I believe.
Namrud, that's it. No easy money says Namrud. That was the guy that used to slap giant game codes, the literally huge game
I
codes.
do remember that.
Yeah, across his forehead.
Oh, Victoria Plum's mentioning Nightmare, which was like a Dungeons and Dragons game.
Oh.
And you
That was
asked,
class.
a wall would give you a riddle, and if you got it wrong, it would just say falsehood, and they'd like
The
lose.
giant spiders in that one.
Anyway, Darren's trying to wrap up. Sorry, Darren.
We have to do this again. This would be good.
To be continued.
Definitely, it's been fun. Yeah, so as you can see, Phoebe's put the Just Giving link in there. If you did donate through this, thank you very much. It's been absolutely amazing this weekend for donations. Everybody's been incredible. I hope you enjoyed it, and I believe Mel's up next, back from Burnout over on our channel. So with a mystery man, which we kind of know who that is, but I won't say it.
There's no mystery. Yeah, before we shut off, like you just said, there's been a bunch of donations made while we've been streaming. So thank you, Darren, for putting this on and entertaining everybody. We're at £5,061.77.
Wow.
Wow, incredible.
So if you did enjoy us waffling about our childhood memories and gaming histories, chuck a couple of quid in. If it is literally a couple of pounds, that's fine. Don't be embarrassed. If that's all you can afford, that's fine. Just chuck a couple of pounds in if we've entertained you.
Indeed. Right, so over to Mel's. So cheers, guys. Thanks for this. It's been fun, and see you again soon.
See you later.
Yeah.
Now that awkward bit when I click end.